looking alley-oop. Dame to Giannis, and the rim's going to feel that one tomorrow.
Uline, Potawatomi Casino Hotel, and Michelob Ultra. You've been listening to Bucks Basketball on the BMO Bucks Radio Network.
Visit family-owned Ken Michaels Furniture and our in-store design centers where you'll still find beautiful, luxurious, heirloom-quality American-made furniture. Right now, save 30 to 35% store-wide and take advantage of our complimentary design services. Whether you're moving, renovating, or updating, our designers will help your vision become a reality. Visit Ken Michaels Furniture in Brookfield on Capitol Drive and in Greenfield on Highway 100 to save 30 to 35% store-wide today. Sleep better and save more with mattresses from Milwaukee Mattress and Ken Michaels Furniture. Handcrafted in our Milwaukee factory, our mattresses utilize natural materials like cotton cushioning, which dissipates body heat, Joma wool quilts for warm wintry nights and cool summer evenings, and natural latex providing superior conformability and pressure relief for aching joints. Stop in today at any Ken Michaels Furniture store and save up to 50% compared to national brands.
Who doesn't need a seasonal wardrobe update? But who has the cash to always keep their wardrobe updated? Ladies, that's why you shop St. Vincent de Paul. Our women's clothing is always a highlight of our stores, and thrift store prices keep the costs low. It allows you to experiment and also find a hidden gem. St. Vincent de Paul thrift stores on Highway 100 in Layton and Greenfield, 23rd in Lincoln, and 76th and Bradley Road in Milwaukee.
Ooh, you're gonna love it, St. Vincent de Paul.
If you're concerned about heart health, remember that you are not powerless. At the Froedtert and the Medical College of Wisconsin Health Network, we're pushing to outsmart heart and vascular disease by helping to assess your risks and guide you to heart strength, by providing breakthrough research and renowned expertise for treating common conditions and the most serious. Let's stay out in front of heart and vascular disease and embrace every day life has to offer. Learn more at froedtert.com/heart.
Hi, I'm Eric Brown, owner of Siding Unlimited, reminding you to double-check your home. Siding Unlimited is the proven exteriors professionals for 31 years. Family-owned and locally operated right here in Wisconsin. Call Siding Unlimited and visit sidingunlimited.com.
Steel walk behind, zero turn, and stand-on mowers are built to get the job done. Shop online or at your local Steel dealer. Steel. Let's go mow.
You just can't pass on Less's Glass. Find us at lessglassservice.com.
Now that the game is done, it's our time to check in.
Haliburton in the front court, crosses over on Giannis. Haliburton to the cup. He lays it in with 1.3 seconds to go.
Bucks Talk starts now.
And that is how this season will end for the Bucks in a game that zigzagged 10 different directions.
Live from the Annex Wealth Management Studios, here's Justin Garcia.
Well, you can't help but laugh at times with the way that one ended. In many ways, a fitting ending to the season full of ups and downs and inconsistencies, and a similar closeout performance against the Indiana Pacers in a regular season game where you lose on a 4-point play by Tyrese Haliburton. You love the fight that you saw from this group. You knew it was going to be a challenge all game long. And I do have some thoughts on the starting lineup and all the piling on we continue to see with Doc Rivers. I think there's a reason why you waited that long to unveil that starting lineup, and I think you saw that over the course of the game. But look, especially with no Damian Lillard, that's a good Indiana Pacers team. The Pacers were a deeper and better team than the Bucks. You needed to play absolutely perfect to beat this team 3 games in a row. You were well on your way, and this is the frustrating part is it was there. Matt, would you have been happier with this, or if the Bucks, not to the levels of the Miami Heat last night, but if the Bucks were just run off the floor and lost tonight, similar to how they lost Game 6 to the Pacers last year?
I'm happier with this, for sure. It's just gut-wrenching that that end makes it gut-wrenching and makes it harder, but the effort they showed tonight to make this the game it was you have to be happier with once you get over the heartbreak aspect of it.
Yeah, and, look, there's a lot of complaining it took until Game 5 to see this starting lineup, and I get it. These were clearly your most impactful guys. We got a pretty candid Doc Rivers after the game, too, that said this was the group they closed the season with, and this was the group they felt best with. This was the group that played the most minutes throughout the series. The guys you were starting put you in a hole that was tough to overcome. I'm not denying any of that. I will even co-sign on the fact that, yeah, you should have started this group earlier. I don't know how much of a difference it makes. And the reason for that is simple. As the game started to unfold, you could see, and this team is starting to run out of gas here. The Pacers had more trustworthy guys. And for the Bucks, the 5 guys that you started this game with and closed this game with, you trusted everything about them on the floor. There were moments where you could find minutes and time for guys like Jericho Sims. You tried to kind of get Kyle Kuzma going off the bench against the second unit, but the reality is you really had 5 guys. You felt like you could play in any situation in this series against Indiana, and they had more than that. And that was one of the biggest things the Bucks were up against, especially once Damian Lillard goes down. And look, we can talk about were you better off defensively to not have Damian Lillard. I can tell you this, you feel a lot better to have Damian Lillard in the final 40 seconds of the game out there on the floor, to be the guy that's getting the inbounds pass, to be the guy that's waiting to get fouled and go to the free throw line and theoretically knock down both of those and help you ice this game and extend the series to 6. So it was something that felt like a matter of time with what the Bucks had. The Pacers were a duper team, and we saw that unfold throughout the course of the game. It doesn't make it any less painful. It doesn't make it any less of a comical way to lose the game, to be up 7 and feel great. I mean, there's 3 different stretches in this game in the fourth quarter and overtime where it felt like, okay, that's the sequence. You're one defensive stop away from icing this game. And I'm glad Doc Rivers mentioned this part at the end of the game, because watching this in real time, I felt like the biggest shot of the game, the biggest moment, sure, those turnovers were huge, but it was that Andrew Nembhard 3. Because when he pulls up and hits a 30-plus foot three-pointer, goes from 7 to 4, and that's when you think, okay, you still got work to do here. You still got to knock down some free throws. You still got to make some plays and play defense, because they're one more of those plays away from this being a one-possession game. And that's exactly what happened. I'm not going to say the Bucks didn't deserve to win this game. They did with the way that they played. So did Indiana. And this was just a matter of the Pacers being deeper, making more plays. And, I mean this in jest, jokingly here. I don't want to take away from the game Gary Trent Jr. had. He was incredible. And when we mentioned there was 3 or so of those sequences where you felt like this is it, you're one stop away from icing this, Gary Trent Jr. was the guy that put you in that spot. But I don't know if I've seen a stretch of a matter of seconds like this. 30 seconds, 25 seconds, where Gary Trent Jr. goes from GOAT to GOAT for the Bucks in this game with 2 of those turnovers. And they both led to points for the Pacers. 20 points scored off of turnovers. That's one of the big differences in this game. Everything else, you loved what you saw. Bucks outshot the Pacers from 3. The way they played this game in the early going with that defensive energy, and you could sense, too, one of the bigger challenges for this roster. This is a great start. I don't know that they can play this way throughout the course of the game, because, as we just mentioned, you're getting down to 5 guys that you pretty much trust to have on the floor in this series. But, man, what an ending to this game. And unfortunately, in many ways, it's a fitting ending to the season for the Bucks. 855-616-1620. the Siding Unlimited talk and text line to join us tonight. The final Bucks talk. I'm not in the predictions business, but man, I really, even before this game tipped off, I really felt like they were going to win this game. I didn't know that I'd say they're going to win the series. I really felt like they were going to win this game. And talking with some people with and around the team in Indiana, that was the consensus. When you had the vibes of the team at the hotel and being around that group of, we feel good about this. And I for me, the big part was you've had 40 hours or so to remove yourself from the scene that was Sunday night at home. The loss of Damian Lillard, and then confirming on Monday, yesterday, that Damian Lillard's season is over, and who knows what that means for next season. I think having that separation, you got that break, you were ready to go. And we saw that for most of this game. Give credit to the Bucks here, too, where when the Pacers did come back, it wasn't until early in the third quarter that they grabbed their first lead of the game. When they did come back, the Bucks continued to answer, and they did not fold. But ultimately, the Pacers just make the biggest shots of the game, make the biggest plays of the game, and win this one tonight. 855-616-1620, the Siding Unlimited talk and text line to join us tonight on the season-ending edition of Bucks Talk. Let's head to the phone lines and start things with Kevin in Milwaukee. You lead us off.
Yes, good evening. Well, I wanted to know if Tyrese Haliburton is a deer hunter, because he certainly is a Bucks killer. He's killed the Bucks the last couple of seasons. He won them that game in the fourth quarter in the regular season. To quote Doc Rivers, the coach, Bucks really tricked off that game. It was a big trick-off moment by the Bucks. Giannis with that 25-foot jumper at the end of regulation, it's not his shot. He should have been in the post, 5 to 10 feet from the bucket, and he should have got him the ball. Doc Rivers didn't do a good job of calling timeouts and structuring plays and coaching the team. And Brook Lopez was exactly where he belongs, on the bench. And those 2 points, could have been gotten by anybody, even me, in that game. 2 of 4 on free throws, that's nothing. The Bucks need a complete facelift. It's time for them to get rid of Giannis because he's kind of soft. He was supposed to be guarding Haliburton in the game, and again, he wasn't guarding Haliburton. At 1.3 seconds left in the game, he scored the final basket. So he killed the Bucks. He killed them last season. He killed them in the regular season, etc. The Bucks need another peg. Giannis is not the answer. He's the only player they have on the team, but they can trade him now and get 2 or 3 quality players to complete a new team. It's time for Giannis to go, and Dame time has been over even before he got to the Bucks in 2023 or 2024. Thank you.
I don't even know where to begin with that one. Look, Doc was asked about the shot by Giannis, too. And as he said, I'm going to live with Giannis taking that shot. Do you know how many shots Giannis took from the post, as Kevin has been a frequent caller calling for that in this game tonight?
No.
3. Do you know why? You think the Indiana Pacers are, 10 seconds left, let's let Giannis get to the elbow there and get to his spot and just back us down and win the game that way. That, again, is what you're able to do. And Gary Trent Jr., incredible tonight. But it's what you're able to do when you don't have a Damian Lillard on the floor. Look, the right thing about that final shot in regulation was the fact that you waited until the end of the shot clock, or wait until the end of the game clock, so there's no chance for the Pacers to get the rebound and win it. Giannis did not have his mid-range shot tonight. I'd have to go back and rewatch to see how close A.J. Green was to him, if he was one pass away on that. But, I mean, Giannis is your best player. I'm going to live with that shot, and especially that you took it at the end of the clock, so there's no second chance. In terms of his other comment, I would imagine we're going to get quite a bit of this tonight, and it's going to be there all throughout the summer. What I can share with you in terms of advice is it's a tough scene. It's going to be a rough landscape in terms of the discourse around this team. And what Kevin suggested is going to be what's out there the most by national folks. It is a very complicated scenario that this team is facing. Now, you heard a lot of optimism from Doc Rivers at the end of the game, and I get that. A lot of what he said is true when you talk about some of the young players that you had to develop. It's a complicated landscape that the Bucks are facing, though. You do have a lot more flexibility. That trade, and Doc Rivers was quick to point out, Kyle Kuzma did not have a great series. None of us are going to sit here and tell you he did. But that trade gave you a lot more flexibility this summer. It opened up future draft picks. It brought you under the second apron. It gives you the potential to be a cap team, depending on what happens with players like Brook Lopez and Bobby Portis, even Pat Connaughton. They have a lot more flexibility. But you have a player that may not play next season. I think very likely won't play next season, who's making $54 million. That's a pretty big anchor in terms of filling out your roster. So that's one of the bigger challenges this team is facing. There's a lot more to get into with the future of this team and why it's not as simple as trade this guy, trade Giannis and tank, right? Like, number one, I've heard a lot of that in the last couple of days, and I get it. You look at the makeup of the roster, you look at younger teams in the Eastern Conference, what the Cleveland Cavaliers have now done with that same roster. The Boston Celtics have some interesting challenges in front of them these next couple of years as well with the cap situation. This Pacers team, that core is intact, and that core is relatively young. There's teams on the rise in the conference. But do we not remember what it was like 2013, 2007, right? I remember sitting through a 15-win Bucks team, and I know Giannis was on that team. Giannis was not the guy he is now. I remember what it was like before that. I'm not racing to the front of the line to get that once again. I think what we've seen, and again, this is the challenging part with the Damian Lillard injury, is what we've seen in the league these past couple of years with this new CBA is super teams are dead in terms of multiple superstars. The model go forward, and I mentioned the Celtics are going to be facing that same type of discourse pretty soon here. The model is clearly one superstar, a star, role players. Guys that you trust, and look at the contract landscape too, where it's primarily max contracts, super max contracts, minimum guys. The middle class has kind of died in this new CBA. You found a lot of young guys, and that was one of the things we touched on with Doc Rivers. I would push back when he said we discovered A.J. Green out of nowhere this year and say, well, I think we kind of saw him last year too. But you really discovered what you have in A.J. Green, and I think you saw A.J. Green's a playoff player. A.J. Green should probably be a starter for this team next season. You got a good chance to retain Gary Trent Jr., too. You got him on a veteran minimum. Just as we said, what the landscape for contracts is, I don't know that there's going to be a mid-level exception type deal for Gary Trent Jr., who's still relatively young. I believe he's going to be 27 next season. It's probably going to be similar to how the Pistons got Malik Beasley, where you basically doubled up the veteran minimum amount, and the Bucks can do that because they're going to have, at the very least, a taxpayer mid-level to use. Kevin Porter Jr. is another guy you were able to see something in and develop. I know we didn't see him tonight, and that was frankly surprising. Ryan Rollins, another one of those guys. Jericho Sims. The Bucs have the bird rights on Jericho Sims, meaning they can pay him more than any team to keep him. And I don't think Jericho Sims is going to be commanding a mid-level exception, right? A $12 to $15 million figure. So you do have these young pieces that you can build around. The challenge is the rest of it. You don't have your first-round pick this summer. You have a pick swap next summer with the New Orleans Pelicans. You have your 2027 pick the year after that, goes to the New Orleans Pelicans. You got a pick swap the year after that. Then in 2029, your first-round pick goes to, I believe, the Blazers in that Damian Lillard trade. Then in 2030, you got a pick swap to worry about. So it's not until 2031 that you control your draft assets. And that's why I don't think tearing down and rebuilding is an option for this team because you don't own those picks. If you were to do that, it doesn't benefit you. You're not seeing the fruits of that, and you're making other teams better. So I think you have to lean into those young guys you have and continue to figure out how do we build on the fly here and how do we retool, leaning into these young guys and using some of this added flexibility that we will now have this summer. But look, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. The Damian Lillard injury, it's tough because of counting or cutting down some of that flexibility and just the fact that it's a tough injury for a guy that plays the way that Damian Lillard plays, the age that Damian Lillard is at. But look, you're in for that discussion if you go outside of Milwaukee and you sample some of the national perspective. The Bucs are toast. The Bucs are screwed. It's time to tear it down and rebuild. That's what you know you're in for a full summer. So we're just warning you. Get used to it. 855-616-1620. The Siding Unlimited talk and text line, 119-118, final in overtime. A brutal and disappointing end to the season for the Milwaukee Bucks, up 7 in the final 40 seconds of overtime and ultimately losing this game tonight to the Indiana Pacers, bringing their season to an end. Zach and David, we'll get to you guys and a few more calls that are coming in as well. We'll take the time all night long to hear from you and get your thoughts on this end to the season for the Bucs. Coming up after this on Bucs Talk.
This is Bucs Talk.
In 1964, we were making strides towards space travel.
Mary Poppins was the #1 movie in theaters.
And the Beatles were taking America by storm.
Which was long before I was born.
Facts. 1964 is also the year it all started for Richland's Tire and Service Centers. 60 years of continuous growth and more happy customers than you can shake a stick at.
Okay, the streamers are a bit overkill. It's just us in the studio.
Well, all right. But it's important to know accomplishments like these aren't possible without a dedicated team. So hats off to them and our founder, my dad, Dick Manchke, for understanding the importance of customer focus.
Facts. There's no 60 years of anything without you, the customer, which is why our focus will remain on you and only you for years to come.
Thank you from all of us here at Richland's Tire and Service Centers.
Richland's Tire and Service, such a refreshing change. Richland's.
I've got a fantastic trip that I'm planning right now. I'd love for you to be with us. It's America's Music Cities for the holidays. It's early December. It's an 8-day tour of some great spots. New Orleans, Memphis, and Nashville. Check out New Orleans, the vibrant French Quarter, all decked out for the holidays. Then we're on to the amazing city of Memphis, Elvis Presley's Graceland. It is going to look absolutely fantastic. On to Nashville, we make chocolate, take a horse-drawn carriage ride, and we stay at the magical Opryland Resort. It's with Colette, the travel company I trust. We'll handle all the details for you, flights, meals, hotels, local experiences. I'm going to be there. I want you to be with us. Send me an email. I send you the information. John@WTMJ.com. John@WTMJ.com. Space is limited. We'll discover America's musical legacy wrapped in dazzling lights and seasonal decor. Let me get you the info. I'd love for you to be with us. John, John, @WTMJ.com. It's America's Music Cities with Colette, the travel company I trust.
Church and Chapel Funeral Homes. Your family, your memories, our priority. Church and Chapel Funeral Homes. There's one near you.
Welcome back to Bucs Talk.
Man, it's tough, though, because I thought my guys fought their butts off. We played heavy minutes with the 5 guys, and they were exhausted. They really were. But both teams were, and they're the last team standing.
Yeah, Bucks team that just ran out of gas. It wasn't like when you're trying to run out the clock, like when you get in those spots of football especially. You're up 2 touchdowns. There's 6 minutes left. I'm still watching the clock. There's enough time for them to score twice. In some ways, it felt like that when you just looked at the minutes these guys were playing and knowing these are the only 5 guys you can really trust to put out there on the floor. I did wonder, what was it, Saturday? We saw J.J. Redick play 5 guys total in the second half of that Lakers-Timberwolves game. First time in NBA history that we saw that. I did wonder as we're watching this one unfold, how many guys do you play in the second half here? I think it was 7 that they played in the second half. I know Brook Lopez had a couple of minutes. And look, credit to Doc Rivers in that sense where he brings in Brook Lopez. He played 1 minute in the third quarter, 1 minute in the fourth quarter. I think it was the fourth quarter stretch where there was those back-to-back plays where the Pacers were just using T.J. McConnell to attack the drop defense and set up that pick and roll, use the screen to get into the paint and shoot that shot from the free throw line. And it led to back-to-back scores for the Pacers. And immediately you saw Doc Rivers say, okay, we got to go back to Bobby Portis. We can't play with this. You play the same 5 guys in overtime, all 5 minutes, and save for that 1 minute from Brook Lopez and 1 minute from Jericho Sims. You played the same 5 guys in the fourth quarter. You just rotated out your bigs with Brook, Jericho, and Bobby Portis. Third quarter, pretty similar story as well. So, look, there was a recognition, and I think Doc Rivers even owned up to that and said that. There's a recognition. These are the guys we got to go to. But you can't play these guys 48 minutes. You certainly can't do that 3 straight games. And that was the challenging part they were up against. When I say you're kind of watching the clock like you would in a football game of, all right, this clock's just got to run out while we have the lead here. You were kind of doing the same thing and saying, keep that lead with these guys so maybe you can find a stretch where you can go to that second unit. That's what worked perfectly. And that's the case. I said, yeah, this is the group that should have started. Sure. In fairness, it's easy to just say, well, why did you wait so long to start that group? It's equally important who's closing the game and who's playing more minutes. And in that sense, those were the guys that were doing that all series long. But look, you saw the thought behind this tonight. What everybody was calling for is you were controlling the situation to bring Brook Lopez, Kyle Kuzma, Taurean Prince, we saw dusted off. You're bringing them into leads rather than saying, okay, we're trying to fit a square peg into a round hole against this Indiana Pacers team, and we're letting go of the rope here. We're letting it slip away from us. Now we got to bring in that second unit to get us back into the game. It just became a matter of not having enough tonight and over the course of this series. And it's tough because I was pretty confident going into this series. I truly believed this was going to be a different story. That the way this Bucks team was playing, that lineup, the 5 guys that played the heaviest minutes tonight, what you saw to close out the season, how improved your defense was. And granted, we didn't see that in 2.5, 3 games of this series, but there are a lot of reasons to point to and say this year is going to be different. I feel strongly about this. And those first 2 games in Indiana, that was a slap in the face and a wake-up call for this group. It's 3 straight years where you go down in the first round of the playoffs, and that's the tough part, especially when you have a player as great, as transcendent as Giannis is, to live with going down in the first round 3 consecutive seasons. I'm not going to say the Bucks are in the best spot of any team. Like, hey, their future's brighter than any other team. I don't think it's quite as bleak as the discourse is that's out there, but there are certainly a lot of challenges that they are going to be facing. But I think this series gave you a lot of answers on, you get to the fork in the road, here's the way that we have to go. 855-616-1620, the Siding Unlimited talk and text line to get in the queue and join us tonight on Bucks Talk. Let's head back to the phone lines and check in with Zach in Milwaukee. You're up next.
Hey, Justin, I got some things to say here. So I know you said, I don't want it to be 07. I don't want it to be 2013. But at the end of the day, we've been in the window of contention for so long, of so many straight years of being in the playoffs. I think it might just be time to trade Giannis and get your picks and start the rebuild. I mean, the window is closed. And also, I think I speak for the fans here. I think we should riot outside of Pfizer Forum if Doc is not announced fired.
Okay, you're putting me in a challenging spot here with both of those. But what I'll say is this. So you brought up the picks part, which is the important part here. It gets complicated because in this scenario, it's a multi-team deal. You're not trading Giannis to the New Orleans Pelicans. And in that scenario, if the return is you're just getting your picks back and then maybe a young player and whatever to fill out the money, are you getting anything for Giannis? I get that it's better to have those picks, but it's not really a return to, hey, we gave you back what you used to have.
It would almost be the move, though. Just to get as many as you can, kind of thing. Because you're just in such a bad spot for your future as it is, with all these guys being free agents. You got a lot of money tied up in Giannis and Dame, and you got a lot of guys that are going to be free agents, and you don't have. There's a few encouraging guys, AJ Green and Kevin Porter Jr., in terms of youth, but it's not a great spot.
It's not. I'm not going to argue that they're in a great spot. So you want them to trade Giannis?
Yes, I would say especially if he requests it, because he has given up. So he's given up the chances to play with other super teams to stay here. He's given so much to here. I think he should kind of get his own say in things from this point on.
Well, he does. He will. And look, the Pfizer Forum doesn't happen without Giannis. The development in Deer District, the hotels, the restaurants, all that's not happening without Giannis. This team might not be in Milwaukee without Giannis. So yes, we're aligned on that point. And I'm not going to pretend to know what Giannis wants. I think it's easy to read between the lines on things said. And if that's what he wants, then so be it. You look for the best deal that you can get. But, to me, number one, that's what has to happen in order to even entertain that, because I get your logic, and it would have to be a massive haul. Even then, what happened? It's a lottery. It's a lottery system. So you trade Giannis, and let's say the picks that you get back, that becomes the 7th pick, and a player doesn't pan out, and then you're just back to where you started. Fine, you got assets, but you don't have anything special surrounding this group, and then you're right back to where you were before.
The thing, even if it doesn't work out, you have to take your chances. Though, right now, even though a team like the Wizards are terrible and tanking right now, they got 5 firsts from the Beal trade, and they. I don't
disagree. Well, they didn't get 5, but they were also I'm not going to compare Giannis to Bradley Beal. It's one thing to trade Bradley Beal. It's another thing to trade one of these guys who is a perennial
but the point
MVP.
Is the Wizards are set for like they have a direction. Like they picked 3 guys in the first round this year and are saying, "Hey, let's take our chances. Let's roll the dice. Let's try and develop them." I mean, I think that because I don't know how this team can contend. I mean, Dame's out like almost the whole year next year. You have so many guys that are going to be free agents. I mean, there's just no way that you can put like that good of a team around Giannis, given the limited money, the limited picks. I mean, that's why I say you trade him, because the window sadly has closed.
The window for being a championship contender in the short term certainly appears. That era of Bucks basketball, if it is not over, it is coming to an end.
Yeah, which is unfortunate. I mean, you can point to a bunch of different things, but at the end of the day, it's like you kind of ran into some bad luck, and you went all in and it didn't work. And at the end of the day, it was a fun era. If Giannis goes, it was a fun era. This is going to be like memories for people. Like 2021 is going to be memories for people. Unfortunately, you got to trade him, and I think you start the rebuild and see what happens from there.
You mind me? How old are you, Zach?
21.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it was a fun era, and for people a little older than you, I mean, this was like, I don't know if you have family members that would talk about the Bucks or friends that knew about the Bucks of the 80s, but for me, I'm about twice your age. I would constantly hear that from, my dad and uncles of, that 80s Bucks team, so good, never broke through because they always came up against the Boston Celtics or the 76ers and a couple of times the Hawks in the playoffs. Like, you would just constantly hear about that. And for me, it was the 90s Bucks, and it was impossible to imagine in the 90s, in a different era of basketball, but in the 90s, that this Bucks team would be competing for championships, let alone win one and have the best player in the league. So to, experience this era has been that generation that had that Bucks team or teams from the 80s. This was that to another level where you got to experience a championship.
Yeah, and at this point, I just think you're at a point where you really can't compete with the rosters that Boston and Cleveland have put together. I mean, they've set themselves up for at least to be the top of the East for like the next 2 to 3 years at this point, given their cores, and there's no way you can match that. I mean, at this point, and I just think you gotta call it where it is, and then obviously it's not ideal to like be paying all these coaches or whatever, but you got it. I mean, the Doc thing, it didn't work, and you just kind of got to cut your losses there. So.
Yeah. Thanks for the call, Zach, and I'm curious to see if that's going to be the consensus feeling of what this team needs to do in the future. Let's grab one more here before the break. David in Mukwonago, you're up next.
Yeah, I don't necessarily agree with Zach was saying there. I do think the Bucks, I mean, you can't get much more for Giannis. You'll never get a player with your picks quite like Giannis. I mean, he's one of the best players to ever play basketball. And he's still right in his prime. He still has a couple years left, and I say we just see what happens with him. But I think, you saw Gary Trent Jr., Kevin Porter Jr., AJ Green. You have a solid 3 guys that can still develop, still grow, still pretty young. I honestly think what the Bucks need to do is just, with their draft picks they have coming up, really draft guys who are... Yeah, that's true, yeah. Well, they've always gone for project guys the last couple of years, and I would really like them to draft a guy that's been playing for a while, seems like a very steady guy, instead of these project guys that never seem to quite pan out for them. Since Giannis, they haven't really panned out. But yeah, I'm glad I'm not the Bucks GM right now, because I don't really envy his job right now. So
yeah, that's the thing to point out too, is it's not just first rounders. They don't have second round picks until they got one, I think, didn't they? In the regard, they don't have a lot until 2031 in first and second round. They don't have their first round pick this summer, so there's no, barring some unforeseen trade, there's nobody that they're going to draft this summer and bring in either round. And then next year's drafts, you got a pick swap with the New Orleans Pelicans. So again, 2026 next summer, pick swap with the Pelicans. So if the Bucks decide let's go nuclear and blow this thing up, you could have the worst record in the league in that scenario. And the Pelicans have a pick swap. So if you win the lottery and get the number 1 pick, guess what? New Orleans is taking that swap. 2027, your first rounder goes to New Orleans. 2029, so you have your pick in 2028. 2029, you have a first round pick that's going to Portland and part of that Damian Lillard trade. And then in 2030, you got a pick swap with the Blazers. So you can't move the 2028 trade because of the Stepien rule. So when you hear they don't control their draft until 2031, you've got, 2 or 3 picks in there between now and 2031, but you can't trade any of them until that 2031 pick. So that's the spot they're in terms of, even looking at things like, well, what if you moved this contract? You got to add sweeteners to it, which would be a first or multiple second-round picks, and that's something that the Bucks just don't have. So we got 1-1 for our poll. I can't believe we're having this discussion of would you trade Giannis. It's not me suggesting it. You know how I feel, but so far the audience is split. 855-616-1620, the Siding Unlimited talk and text line to join us tonight on Bucks Talk. Season comes to an end in the first round for a 3rd consecutive year. Plenty of calls to continue to get to throughout the course of the night. We'll continue to hear from you coming up after this on Bucks Talk.
You're listening to Bucks Talk.
You'll find that the licensed and certified electricians from Quality are top-notch. We've been around for over 60 years, so expect nothing but the best. And here's the kicker. With over 60 vehicles out there on the roads, you're not going to have to wait very long at all for the electrical service you need now. This is Anthony Zanevsky. For all your residential electrical needs, call Quality.
Call Quality for the signature service you deserve.
Call Quality. Heating, cooling, plumbing, and electric. Over 60 years in business, with over 60 vehicles out in the field so we can respond ultra quickly to your emergency AC needs. When you call Quality for emergency AC service, you can count on a swift response to get the job done right away. So if the heat's got you to the point where it's just too hot to handle, call Quality and we'll get you the signature service you deserve.
Call Quality for the signature service you deserve.
Call Quality. Heating, cooling, plumbing, and electric.
Hey, it's WTMJ's Steve Scavini with a special announcement. My dream of visiting my 50th state, Hawaii, is going to come true in November of 2026. And I'm inviting all you WTMJ fans to join me. Fox World Travel has created an incredible 3-island itinerary, which includes Oahu, the Big Islands of Hawaii and Maui. We'll visit Pearl Harbor, Hawaii Volcanoes National Park, and a Kona coffee plantation. And you know how much I love coffee. We'll enjoy a luau on the Big Island, visit the Maui Aquatic Center. It's an active itinerary, but includes plenty of free time, too. My wife, Kathy, and I would love to have you join us on this WTMJ listener trip. By the way, P.S., I'm planning a unique way to commemorate this accomplishment. More details on that soon. To get more information or make a reservation, Join me and my wife Kathy. Visit foxworldtravel.com or call 866-GO-FOX-GO. Don't miss out on the early booking discount. Best of Hawaii. Join us with Steve Scavini, Kathy Scavini, Rose Gray. Call today.
At Big Fish Contracting, we want every home project to be a good story worth sharing. That's why we as a team aim to exceed your expectations. We can improve any aspect of your home. Everything from a complex remodel to the essential roof, gutters, siding, and windows. Integrity, humility, and kindness are why we've grown in southeastern Wisconsin for the last 2 decades. Visit bigfishcontracting.com to learn how Big Fish is renovating homes and redeeming an industry.
The Roundball Repartee returns. This is Bucks Talk.
Life comes at you fast in the NBA.
Season comes to an end tonight for the Bucks. A 119-118. I can't believe they just did that. Loss in Indiana to the Pacers. Up 7 with 40 seconds left. And one of those rare situations where Gary Trent Jr. goes from GOAT to GOAT. And it's not to put the blame entirely on Gary Trent Jr. But 2 late turnovers that he was a part of that kept the door open for the Indiana Pacers, and they stun the Bucks. Very similar vibes to that regular season game in Indy, March 11th, when Tyrese Haliburton wins it on a 4-point play. Indiana Pacers do it again, and they beat the Bucks in overtime tonight, bringing their season to an end in the first round in consecutive seasons against the Pacers. And all told, 3 straight first-round exits for the Bucks. 855-616-1620 is the Siding Unlimited talk and text line to join us tonight on Bucks Talk, the venting session. Let it all out, because this is the last one we have of the season. Let's go back to the phone lines and talk with John in Appleton. You're up next.
Hey, what's up, man? I don't mind keeping Giannis. I think the only way you would get rid of him is if the other team would take Dame and Kyle Kuzma's contract.
Okay, well, that's not happening.
Well, I don't, if you want them, but because then you have a total clean slate, but like you said, if it doesn't happen, well, then you keep rolling with them. Fine. The thing that really matters is you have to have some kind of a system to maximize talent. And the Bucks coaching staff just has not shown an ability to do that. I just am in awe at how many times, not just in this series, but throughout the course of the whole year, where something works and then you don't see it again. They just completely get away from it. Like you have a nice double screen, a nice pick and roll, and it works great. A nice cut to the basket, and then you don't see a screen for another 5, 6, 7 minutes in the game. Doc's inability to play the players when they're supposed to be out there, it's just there's no system, and that really is the whole problem. Whether you keep Giannis or not, it takes him half the series to figure out who should be out there. Taurean Prince was the same as Beasley. The same thing, same player. Because when you have that whoever is playing that slot, they played the same slot essentially, same kind of type of game. You could put any decent player out there, and they're gonna give you what they gave you. The problem is they don't bring anything else to the table. And an NBA player, you got to have more complete players, in those slots. And just because a guy has a decent shooting percentage doesn't mean that he's a good player. You know what I'm saying? What do you think?
I'm not sure what you're getting at. I mean, yeah, I agree with that part, but what's the larger picture here?
I guess the larger picture is, the inability to maximize the talent. I mean, you look at like Doc cannot take any credit for any like sort of player development that has taken place. The guys that were there, he just throws them out there. I think the one player maybe that he could take a little bit of credit for, I think, was Ajax, because when he inserted Ajax in the starting lineup, it actually helped turn the season around. But then you just get so biased against him because you just say, well, he can't score. That means he can't play. And it's like, yeah, but he can bring something to the table that you need. And if you can get good shots.
Did you not just tell me? Did you not just say in the last sentence you got to be a complete player when you were bringing up Torian Prince and Malik Beasley?
Yeah, you're right. But I guess I would say more like to maximize the guys what they can do, And I think if you need stops, you need guys out there that can get stops, and and you don't sell the guy like, hey, this is what you're going to do, this is what you're going to bring for us every night, and just sell it and when you go out there, everybody knows this is why he's out there. And if you can sit Lopez, and that's a good move, but then when you bring Portis in, you got the same problem. And I think I don't see how Doc Rivers can coach in today's NBA, and the Bucks, even Bud was the same thing. He had no idea. Bud should have used AJ Green, and I remember he would never play him, and I was like, dang, this kid's pretty good, And these coaches, they come in and they just don't you think if TJ McConnell was on the Bucks, do you think that he would do anything like what he does for the Pacers? I don't. He wouldn't even hardly touch the ball. He wouldn't even get in the game. It just because some of these coaches, they just know how to get stuff out of guys that just the Bucks coaches haven't. And I guess that would be my main point.
A lot. Thanks for the call. A lot to unpack here. I mean, AJ Green was a rookie in Bud's final season. He could shoot. He continued to develop the last 2 years. I don't know that you make a strong case that AJ Green should have been playing minutes over the group that they had in that final season when you had a backcourt of Drew Holiday and Grayson Allen still in the mix for this team. Chris Middleton still playing on the wing. The point about Torian Prince and Malik Beasley and those type of players, I do not disagree with. But, I mean, let's also take a step back and what do you expect? We're talking about veteran minimum contracts. And those are guys that sign for a veteran minimum for a reason, that there's a flaw in their game. Either there's something that they don't have on one end of the floor, they're an older player, they're a player coming off an injury. There's some type of question if you get that guy. With Malik Beasley, it was certainly defense. And I think he's fit in more than nicely with Detroit. I mean, Malik Beasley would have been great on this version of the Bucks because you had enough defense around him. And last year he was miscast as a starter who was taking on the toughest defensive assignments. That wasn't Doc Rivers, by the way, that put that in place. Torian Prince, I mean, the knock on him was always he's a hesitant shooter. He had great shooting percentage throughout the season here. But you could see in the series, too, he's going to be hesitant to take the open shot. And especially against a defense that's connected, you can't afford to do that. You can't pass up a good look and wait for a better one in these situations. And it also doesn't help. I think you're playing him out of position and miscast there. Asking him to take on some of those assignments like a Tyrese Haliburton earlier in the season, or a series, I should say. So, yeah, I mean, there's clearly flaws and warts in the game of those players and a handful of guys on this team. But it is the cost of doing business when, the last 2 years, all you've had at your disposal is a veteran minimum contract to give out. You got Gary Trent Jr. on a veteran minimum this season for reasons I don't think any of us are sure of. The Raptors pulled their qualifying offer heading into free agency. And I don't know if Gary Trent Jr. had any other offers out there, if it was solely the relationship that he had with Damian Lillard. But that is one of the better veteran minimum signings you're ever going to find. Not only because of the type of production he gave you on both ends of the floor, but because of his age, too, at 26 years old. That's not the norm to get that type of guy in a vet minimum. So that's, again, why that trade, as much as it did not work out this season. When we talk about trading Chris Middleton, the on-the-court performance, it did not yield what you hoped to get. But it did open up some things in terms of your flexibility in the summer, the very limited dealings you have, where it's not just we can only offer you the veteran minimum, so we can only get guys like a Taurean Prince, like a DeLon Wright. That was an important piece for this group to at least say we got more that we can use. Again, it's not a good spot to be in, and somebody else brought up the trades. I do want to get to that because I've heard that kicked around quite a bit. And I know I've told you never say never and no contract is unmovable. There is no trade scenario where you tell a team you want Giannis, you're taking Damian Lillard and Kyle Kuzma. The salary cap, and I know you can go past the cap, but the cap is $154 million. That hypothetical trade of, okay, take these two guys with him, that team is taking on $128 million for three players. So you're already right up against the cap. You're certainly going to be a first apron team. You're probably a second apron team at that point. Nobody's signing up for that. Not now that we've had 2 years to see what this cap means and how you have to build your roster. And I mentioned it a couple of times. The Celtics are in a better spot than the Bucks. No one is going to dispute that. But they're going to be a fascinating team to keep an eye on because of those numbers that we just mentioned, and because sooner or later, and it may be sooner, it may be this summer, somebody's leaving that team. They're going to have to start to break up that team when you look at the contracts that they've doled out there and what that cap situation is. Next season, Jaylen Brown, $53 million. Jason Tatum, $54 million. Drew Holiday, we love, started to pick up some more injuries and break down at 35 years of age. Same age as Damian Lillard. He's making $32 million. Kristaps Porzingis, $30 million. Derek White, $28 million. One of those last three names we mentioned is going to be gone in the next, maybe this summer, in the next year and a half. It's what we're left with what this cap means, with what the CBA means, and how you have to go about building your roster. 855-616-1620, the Siding Unlimited talking text line. Let's grab one more here. Q, you're up next. I think I know your answer. Are you in favor of trading Giannis?
No, we got to keep him. I want to ride it out with him, and there's no point in tanking when you don't control your own draft capital. So I think I'm actually, like, the last time we talked, it was hitting me hard because this felt inevitable. Like, whether we won tonight or not, like, we were going to be lucky to escape this series, let alone, like, do anything else. But the reason I'm looking forward to next season is, like, it has felt for the last, like, basically 7 years, like it was championship or bust. And there's going to be a little pressure off next year. We can just enjoy the team and the basketball, and, like, I'm sure John Horton. Go ahead.
We hope.
Well, either way, like, whether Giannis is here or not, next season is not going to be championship or bust. So, like, if we start off 1-8, it's not going to be a complete letdown, like, miserable defending this team to your friends and the media, and, like, I don't know. It's just the last few years have not been really fun. It's always felt like we've been, like, stepping on eggshells or just had our backs against the walls just because of the pressure that everyone was under. And if you're a true fan, you're like, you're just riding and dying with this team every day. So I think it'll be similar to Jordan Love's first season, where you're kind of like hoping for the best, but if they don't make the playoffs, like, so be it. Like, it's kind of like next year's a rebuilding year, whether Giannis is here or not. And I am grateful for this ownership team and John Horst for trying to get creative. Like, the reason that we don't have our draft capital is because we kind of sold our soul, our future, to get Drew Holiday, and we got a championship from that. And then we took another big swing. Like, we didn't swing for a home run. We swung for a grand slam with Damian Lillard. Like, I don't regret that. I'm glad that they tried to do something to capitalize on Giannis's window here. Like, I bet there's a lot of Mavs fans that wish that they could have done something else for Dirk Nowitzki at the end of his career. Like, he didn't really get 2 shots. He had 1 shot. That was it. Like, we took 2 big swings with Giannis and got 1 home run. So I don't know. I'm trying to look on the bright side. I think Giannis will be here next year, unless he demands a trade, which I don't think he will. And it's a tough day. I also think, like, look at this coaching staff. Like, Greg Buckner reworked this defense. Where did we finish? We were top 10 in defense.
Around there. They were top 10 in the second half of the season. I think they finished like 13th or so.
But at the beginning of the year with this roster, yeah, like it's pretty remarkable. Like, compared to the roster and then the coaching changes, like I will question the offense. It never really came together. Mm-hmm. But I mean, this coaching staff is heavily invested in. And like, I just think this ownership team does whatever they can to make this work. And I know I'm frustrated too. It didn't work, but I'm just going to repeat it again. I'm glad we took a big swing. And when you take a big swing, it doesn't always work, but at least we have a franchise that's willing to do it. So, and Justin, thank you for keeping us informed this year. And I'm looking forward to hearing all the rumors from you during the offseason.
Well, let me ask you this before you go. And they were 10th overall in offense, 12th in defense, which is quite surprising. It was a lot of what their offense started to do down the stretch that pushed that number up. But we don't know everything that's going to happen in the offseason, obviously. But if we just say you retain the young guys, so you use parts of your taxpayer mid-level to pay Gary Trent Jr. a little bit more, a similar deal to what Malik Beasley got, where he went from the $3 million minimum to $6 million with the Pistons. You do something like that with Gary Trent. You have bird rights, not to get too much into minutia and bore everyone with the CBA, but it just means you can pay more to keep Jericho Sims than anyone. You keep Jericho Sims. You bring back Kevin Porter Jr., whether he picks up his player option or you do a similar thing you did with Gary Trent Jr., and you obviously have A.J. Green, and Ryan Rollins is going to be a restricted free agent. You keep him as well. So you keep all those young guys. Let's say Bobby Portis opts in to his contract as well. So you have that nucleus and mix. Realistically, without knowing what else they do, where would you put this team, their ceiling, for like a playoff seeding going into next season?
Probably 5 or 6. But even then, if he's like, there's no Olympics this year, so Giannis should come back recharged even more than last year. And like, people keep saying this is an old team. There's a young core here.
It's old. It's getting younger, but it's still, yeah. And look, it might not be old after this summer too, depending on what happens with some of those other names.
Yeah, and like, I think for as frustrated as we were with Kuz, he is tradable. And like, I don't want them to trade Pat Connaughton necessarily, but his albatross of a contract is now expiring. And like, Brooke is disappointing at what he was making this year, but if we can sign him to next to nothing, like, he's a good bench player that can help teach Sims what to do. I don't know. Like, I guess I still think we're a playoff team with what you just described, but what's going to be nice is it's not going to be championship or bust, which will be great. And can you remember, was the Warriors' last championship after Clay's ACL?
The 2022 you're talking about?
Yeah. So he took a year off. The team didn't do well. They reloaded, and then they won the next year. I'm not saying that we're gonna, like, Dame will come back, but, like, there's a chance that Dame and Giannis do play together again.
Yeah. I would also, though, I love the optimism, but I would also,
he's a little younger.
Yeah, I would point out Klay Thompson came back as a 31-year-old from 2 missed seasons with the ACL and Achilles, right, for Klay Thompson.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was 31, and people have brought it up with Kevin Durant as well. Like, well, talking about, can you trade this contract? Because the Nets signed Kevin Durant and paid him for a full season, knowing he wasn't going to pay. Kevin Durant was 30 years old when he signed with the Brooklyn Nets and was coming back from that torn Achilles in the 2019 finals. So, yeah, it's a different conversation when we're talking about Dame is going to turn 35 this summer.
If we're going to flirt with Giannis trade rumors, like the idea of packaging Giannis and Dame and Kuz, I wonder if the Suns would want to get out of Beal's contract that badly and give us KD and Beal and some fillers.
I mean, why would you want to do that? You're right back in the same spot.
But then you got Booker and Giannis.
Well, you said packaging,
and we would probably have to throw in like our 2032 or something like that.
Well, hang on. What is the deal you're suggesting? Hypothetically speaking,
you're saying that like you couldn't trade that much of your cap.
Yeah.
I'm suggesting, I don't want to do this, but I'm saying, like, it's the off season now. We could say whatever we want. Like, this is all for fun, but you could do KD and Beal and whoever for Giannis and Dame. And then that other guy was saying Kuz.
Yeah, but why would the Bucks want to do that?
Because then you're competitive again next year. Like, you got KD
for 1 year.
They could try and resurrect.
You got a soon-to-be 37-year-old KD for 1 year, and then you're stuck with that anchor of a contract with Bradley Beal.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just like, it's John Horst. He's a magician.
I don't think that one's going to happen.
I hope it doesn't. I don't want to trade Giannis. It's the off season. We're just going to shoot from the hip from now on out.
Q, always a pleasure to hear from you throughout the course of this season.
Yeah. Thanks for everything, Justin. Take care.
855-616-1620, the Siding Unlimited talk and text line to join us tonight on Bucks Talk. Still quite a few calls to get to as we always get here. The last episode of the season, this one feels a little different too, because of the injury to Damian Lillard, because maybe it does mean the Bucks have now transitioned into a different era. But a lot that's on your mind, so we'll continue to take your thoughts throughout the course of this show. 855-616-1620, the number to join us. More after this on Bucks Talk.
The Hardwood Homilies continue after this. This is Bucks Talk.
AccuNet Mortgage is an equal housing lender. NMLS ID 255368.
Flimsy, feeble, flaccid. That's how you can describe most pre-approval letters these days, because most banks still issue pre-approval letters without actually verifying your income, employment, or down payment. That's the exact opposite of an AccuNet rock-solid, fully verified and guaranteed pre-approval, where we put a $2,000 guarantee behind the fact the seller can actually rely on the terms of your pre-approval and offer. With AccuNet, there's also a possibility of issuing a property-specific pre-approval with as little as a 10% down payment that includes the magic words words, no appraisal required. That's right, AccuNet may be able to issue your pre-approval without needing an appraisal. That's the kind of certainty that can help a seller say yes to your offer. Sure, you can try competing with a flimsy bank pre-approval, or you can click on the blue button at AccuNet.com and get started with the pre-approval listing agents and sellers recognized as the best in the business. That's ACCUNET.com.
WTMJ's Eric Bilstead here for QC Kinetics. For more than 8 years, QC Kinetics has been the nation's leader in non-surgical relief for joint pain. You heard that right. Non-surgical relief. More than 50,000 patients who had knee pain, back pain, now living pain-free. Those with shoulder and hip pain, it's gone. The regenerative cell therapy restores tissues in your achy joints. Dr. Caravelli's team uses biologic growth factors with robust healing properties carefully and strategically placed in your joint. And there's no surgery. Remember that. It's a powerful and potent way to give your joints new life, repairing the old tissue. Here's what you do. You call today, 414-285-3474. 414-285-3474. Call QC Kinetics for your free consultation. 414-285-3474. Call QC Kinetics today.
Hi, I'm Eric Brown, owner of Outdoor Living Unlimited. Outdoor Living Unlimited is Wisconsin's #1 TimberTech decking installer. We install anything decks and more. Stop by Outdoor Living Unlimited showroom and visit OutdoorLivingUnlimited.com.
Stop feeling embarrassed about thinning hair and start looking and feeling your best with Hair Grow by New Nordic. Available online at Amazon, Walmart.com, and NewNordicUSA.com, or at your local CVS.
This is Bucks Talk.
Bucs season comes to an end tonight at the hands of the Indiana Pacers, 119-118. A gutting overtime loss, a game you led by 7 points with 40 seconds left. A Andrew Nembhard 33-foot three-pointer makes it a 4-point game, and then the Bucs would turn the ball over on back-to-back possessions when they just had to hold on to the ball and get fouled. And Tyrese Haliburton scores the final 5 points of the game. And the Pacers win this one tonight, 119-118 in overtime, and end the Bucs season for a second consecutive season. 855-616-1620, the Siding Unlimited talk and text line. To join us tonight on Bucs Talk, let's head back to the phones and check in with Logan in Madison. You're up next.
Hey, Justin. Thanks for taking my call. Earlier, you'd asked a caller how old he was, and he was 21. For a bit of context, I was 21 and Brandon Jennings was my GOAT, and he came up with the Bucks in 6 and changed the culture. But I just wanted to say about the Giannis trade talk, and I hate that we're doing this already. Why would the Bucks trade the only good player that has embraced and loved Milwaukee? I just don't see it happening. Plus, we don't control our own picks. It seems silly. And I think in today's NBA, teams are building chemistry, camaraderie more than ever. And if Giannis were to leave, he'd still have to do that wherever he goes. And I think he knows something's building here. I think he stays, not to mention the Mavericks' reaction to Luka. Milwaukee, I think a lot of fans would be pretty upset. But tonight's callers, maybe not. Some of them are ready to move on, it seems like. But that's all I wanted to say. Thanks for taking my call.
Yeah, thanks for the call. You're not going to get me to sign off on, yes, you should trade Giannis, and that's how you get better. The fact that you don't control your draft picks for the next few years changes all of that. It's not just you not being able to reap the rewards of a bad season. And if the Bucks were to theoretically win the lottery in each of the next 2 seasons, you don't get the #1 pick. So it's not even that it doesn't benefit you. You're making other teams better in that situation. I mean, could you work out a scenario where you say, we need to get our picks back? Sure. Why does Giannis want to go to New Orleans? Right? If it's, I want to go somewhere where I can win a championship. It's not the New Orleans Pelicans, not with the current iteration of that team. And then it becomes a multi-team deal. And, as Brian Windhorst and many others have always said, if you got a 3-team deal, it means you don't really have a deal. I don't know what the magic elixir is that's out there to say, you trade Giannis and this is how you get better. And to me, the biggest thing why, look, ultimately we know how the league works. Everything is in his hands. And if he surveys the landscape and says, I've seen the roster, I've seen everything that we've talked about with these players, I just don't feel like I'm going to be 31 next season. It will be my 31 season. I don't feel like I'm going to have the chance to ever get to that level again with this group. I would like to move on. Unfortunate, but fine. So be it. But I don't see what that deal is that makes you better. And when you're talking about, you bring in draft picks and you do this, we just criticized the bulk of the callers. They criticized John Horst for his draft picks. And I get it's different when you're picking theoretically first or fourth versus where the Bucks have traditionally selected these past few years. But it is such a roll of the dice, and especially with a lottery involved, you just don't know where you're going to finish. Like the Oklahoma City Thunder could get a top pick in the draft this year, thanks to the Philadelphia 76ers, the way that the lottery and other trades work out. So I think it's just, for many of us that can remember what it was like in that gap, a pretty wide gap, frankly, between that era of the 80s Bucks, late 70s through the 80s Bucks, and this group that for 7 years, maybe more likely than not 5 or 6 years, you were a championship contender. It was pretty bleak in there. To get players to want to come to Milwaukee, to get on the map, we mentioned how much everything with this organization changed when Giannis started to ascend. Who knows if we're talking about the Milwaukee Bucks, if it's not for Giannis and that ascension. They're not playing in Fiserv Forum. If that's the case, they might not be in Milwaukee. That development isn't there. It gets pretty bleak. Like when you got one of these, hang on to it unless it becomes clear, I don't want to be here. 855-616-1620, the Siding Unlimited talk and text line. Ann in Whitefish Bay, you're up next.
Oh, hi. Thank you for taking my call. I listen to you all the time after the games, and I absolutely love you. I called initially because I was shocked about tonight, because that was I've never seen an ending like that in my life, and I have been a Bucks fan. I was lucky enough to have season tickets in when we got Lou Alcindor, who then became Kareem Jabbar, and we won a championship. Yay, yay.
WTMJ, W277C.
Oh, go ahead.
Hello. Oh, and what I want to say, I've waited all these years, 2021, to have a championship again. And people that call, and they even want to talk about trading Giannis, they don't understand. He is, just like you said, he's just been awesome. And if he wants to go, of course, we have to be gracious and let him go. But I don't think he will. And I think what I see, because I watch a lot of basketball through my life, like I said, I'm 78, Kareem Jabbar's age. And I think we have some players around that if Giannis is willing to stick in there, and that they can become really good. And we might be able to be the 5th seed again next year. So for some of the younger people that call, you just don't know what it's like. I mean, we had some good years, with Ray Allen, and that was great, but we never got to win the championship. And who knows if we would have Fiserv Forum if it wasn't for Giannis. Go ahead.
Did you have season tickets the year they won in 71?
Yes.
How long did you have those for?
After he left, I was just devastated.
Yeah.
After Kareem left.
Yeah.
So I stopped. I couldn't stand it anymore. and then throughout the years, I didn't have season tickets until this past. Still, when Giannis came, when we have Giannis, and then I got to take, my son, who did pass away from glioblastoma, so I got to take him to see the 2021 championship game with my grandson Jack, and I'm going to tell you, we remember that. And then, sadly enough, my son did die in 2023. But we always remember my son, who was a diehard Bucks fan, he got to see them win the championship, and that's what it's really about. It's fun to be, get to the, maybe it's fun to, be the fifth seed or the third seed or the second seed, whatever. But there's nothing like winning a championship, no. And I think we do have the chance again to win. I mean, we do.
Yeah,
I know that. Go ahead.
No, and thanks for the call. And it's fun to have a chance, right? And I mean, that's the thing that I hang on to the most with this discussion. Look, and a few others, we've all mentioned it tonight. If this is, I don't even feel the most comfortable saying it, but if it's something that Giannis decides, then so be it. But it's fun to have a chance. And you have a chance with this guy, especially as we talked about the changes to the CBA and what it means for team construction. It's no longer super teams. And, for all of us that got 2021, it was an experience we'll never forget. The talk, too, of, we heard it with the Packers, of Brett Favre only got one Super Bowl and only played in two. How did Aaron Rodgers only play in one Super Bowl? You've heard more and more of, I can't believe, I forget who it was, but the other day, Giannis and Jokic are probably only going to finish with one championship, and that's absolutely criminal. There is only one team that gets to win a championship every season. When you get one, it's the greatest feeling in the world. And I remember, as disappointing as it was in 2022 and every year thereafter, I remember 2023 in the finals. I'm sure a lot of Bucks fans were rooting hard for the Denver Nuggets, first and foremost because they're playing the Miami Heat. But, when you get that feeling, and especially as a little brother franchise, not one of the blue bloods. You're not the Celtics or the Lakers or the Knicks. You're one of these teams that was just kind of a flyover country team that's not really discussed all that much. There's all the wish casting to get the best players off of your team. Like, when that team breaks through, and all of the shortcomings and misfortunes that the Bucks had through the years, the 2021 Eastern Conference Finals, all those teams in the 80s that we mentioned went up against the Celtics year after year after year, or the 76ers, and just came up short. And then going through, 2010 onward, even before that, after the 2001 Eastern Conference Finals, from that point until the Bucks broke on through and beat the Pistons in the first round of the playoffs, 2 decades passed before they won in the first round of the playoffs. I hope we're not talking about 3 straight years and the start of a 2-decade run once again, because as many of us remember, that was not fun. But it makes breaking through all the more rewarding. And there was a lot that felt special about that 2021 championship. It's hard to believe it's already 4 years ago, and I think that's the tough part to come to grips with as well, as you see how much time has slipped by and think, man, that was 4 summers ago? Like, that felt like a couple weeks ago. I can't believe it's that long ago. And that's the reality that sets in, too, when you think about age and how far removed you are from that, and other teams that have started to build those rosters and how you fit into that landscape. But it makes it all the more special. And that's why, to round out that point, I said, I'm sure a lot of us rooted for the Denver Nuggets because they were in a similar spot. A team that doesn't get discussed. A team that was never, in the 80s, a good team. But in the 90s and the 2000s decades, again, they had some good teams with Carmelo Anthony and George Karl, ironically enough, as the head coach, but not a team that everybody thought, this is a serious title contender. And they get a championship. And I think there was a part of, okay, I feel good for that team to get it and experience it. Even though it came at the Bucks' expense. The Toronto Raptors in 2019 as well. Like, those are the teams you look at and you say, okay, if it's not us, I want them to experience what we did in 2021. Now, ordinarily, I'd say the Indiana Pacers would fit that bill as well. I'm not going to make that claim, especially after the last 2 years. But look, 29 teams end the season disappointed. The math is never on your side. Every single year, you go in knowing that. You can feel great about every move you made and how you constructed your roster, and we have this and that, and we have the best player in the world. But the math is not on your side. 29 out of 30 teams are going to go into the summer disappointed. 97% of the teams in the league. And the Bucks have been in that 97% the last 4 years. 855-616-1620, the Siding Unlimited talk and text line. Still a handful of calls to get to. Should we squeeze one more in here before the break?
Sure.
All right, let's take Artie and Cudahy. You're up next. Artie, are you there?
All right, maybe not.
Go once. All right, Mike in Shorewood, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right, go ahead, Mike.
I want to talk about this was just an all-time collapse, man. Inexcusable. Gary Trent, he went from looking to be like he was going to be the hero of the game tonight to being the ultimate GOAT. You cannot make those mistakes in those situations. Inexcusable. A youth league basketball player shouldn't, let alone a pro player at the highest level. Just, I don't know how the hell that happened, especially the final one where it looked like they just tossed it to him. He was standing by himself. It looked like he was going to catch the ball. He fumbled it and goes through his legs to get the ball back, and unfortunately Haliburton gets the game winner. The way they defended Haliburton there in overtime when he was just cooking them there in the fourth quarter throughout overtime was unacceptable. You had to throw two-man at him, let somebody else beat you if they had to, because Haliburton was just red hot, and they let him continually one-on-one get to the paint there and drive to the bucket and score repeatedly. Just a defensive collapse there down the stretch. Just all-time bad, man. It's mind-numbing how they lost this game in so many ways. When your win probability was about like 99.9%, and to lose it the way they did in the final 40 seconds, this is going to be a just gut-wrenching offseason for them to know that they battled their asses off the whole game, looked like they were going to force a Game 6 back to Pfizer, and to have it snatched away to them like they did, man, this is going to be just painful. And one final thing as far as Giannis goes, if you're Giannis, I think your best bet is to stay with the Bucks because the new salary cap makes it so impossible for you to win a title going elsewhere. The super team model is done with. There's been, 6 different winners in the last 6 years. Even Boston, they drafted a majority of those guys, and it makes it so punitive to go anywhere else and try to collect teams. It doesn't matter who you are. You can be the Lakers now. They look like they're going to be out in the first round with Luka and LeBron. So if he thinks he's going to go elsewhere where the team is going to have to give up a haul to get him, he's going to find out that he's going to be worse off on a team that's worse than the Bucks are. So if you're his agent in his camp, you tell him this place is dedicated to you. This is your home, and the organization is dedicated to building around you. Unfortunately, bad luck with the Dame injury into next year, but Horace has shown he's willing to get guys. Unfortunately, some of them might not pan out, but, I mean, look around the league. Who the hell is winning, outside of the last dynasty by Golden State? We're not going to see that anymore. So he doesn't have to make a mistake that Kevin Durant did where he thinks he's going to go to all team to team where you're going to win and you're going to find out you're not winning anything. So, Giannis, if I'm him, I'd like to stay here where they're dedicated to you and you can build your legacy and win. And I think they'll break through eventually because I don't think there's going to be any more super teams. Even Boston. Boston's not a super team. They're very beatable. So just final thoughts, man. And it's going to be an interesting offseason. And hopefully the Bucks will reload and get back to it next year. I know this is a gut-wrenching feeling tonight, but hey, that's sometimes sports, man, the way it goes sometimes. Thanks for the time.
All right, Mike, coming in guns blazing there. Yeah, I'm frankly surprised we haven't gotten more of that level of vitriol for the way that the Bucks closed this game. The Celtics are a super team. I'll just push back on that. And they drafted Tatum and Brown. Like, it's not knocking the Celtics for how they construct the roster, but they didn't build the roster through the draft. I mean, they drafted Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. They traded for Drew Holiday. They traded for Derek White. They traded for Kristaps Porzingis. They traded for Al Horford. Sam Hauser was undrafted. But I think the Celtics are the last of that breed. And I think it could be as early as this summer, especially if Boston doesn't reach the finals. And we just went through the cap figures of that team, too. Like, sooner or later, you got to start to move off of those guys. Giannis did talk after the game about the interactions, plural, that we saw after the game had ended with Mr. Haliburton and with Benedict Mathurin as well. It was a pretty lengthy answer from Giannis. I do want to get to that in a second. We got one more call to get to. So let's grab this one here. Dean in Janesville, you're up next.
Yeah, what I think is a big part of the game was with 37 seconds left, and Green missed that second free throw, because that would have given them an 8-point lead with 37 seconds left. And they might have not, with their last shot, Indiana might not have taken a 3. They might have taken a 2. Then that would have sent it to overtime.
Wait, what? Say again?
When Green missed that second free throw with 37 seconds left, if he would have made it, that would have given him an 8-point lead.
Okay.
And then it might have went to overtime.
Okay. It might have. Anything else on the game?
And do you think the Bucks would have been better off to keep Middleton? That's what I wanted to ask you. Thank you.
Thanks for the call, Dean. And another surprise right before the buzzer. I'm surprised it took that long to get that one, too. I do have some thoughts on that. I do want to get to Giannis's comments after the game. So we can have one final discussion this season on the trade deadline deal that sent Chris Middleton to the Washington Wizards. Check in on the other scores, as there was one more elimination tonight, and one team staved off elimination, and get to those Giannis comments. So we'll do all of that coming up in the final segment of the final show this season of Bucks Talk.
The Hardwood Homilies continue after this. This is Bucks Talk.
AccuNet Mortgage is an equal housing lender. NMLS ID 255368.
Flimsy, feeble, flaccid. That's how you can describe most pre-approval letters these days, because most banks still issue pre-approval letters without actually verifying your income, employment, or down payment. That's the exact opposite of an AccuNet rock-solid, fully verified and guaranteed pre-approval, where we put a $2,000 guarantee behind the fact the seller can actually rely on the terms of your pre-approval and offer. With AccuNet, there's also a possibility of issuing a property-specific pre-approval with as little as a 10% down payment that includes the magic words, "no appraisal required." That's right, AccuNet may be able to issue your pre-approval without needing an appraisal. That's the kind of certainty that can help a seller say yes to your offer. Sure, you can try competing with a flimsy bank pre-approval, or you can click on the blue button at AccuNet.com and get started with the pre-approval listing agents and sellers recognized as the best in the business. That's ACCUNET.com.
WTMJ's Eric Bilstead here for QC Kinetics. For more than 8 years, QC Kinetics has been the nation's leader in non-surgical relief for joint pain. You heard that right. Non-surgical relief. More than 50,000 patients who had knee pain, back pain, now living pain-free. Those with shoulder and hip pain, it's gone. The regenerative cell therapy restores tissues in your achy joints. Dr. Caravelli's team uses biologic growth factors with robust healing properties carefully and strategically placed in your joint. and there's no surgery. Remember that. It's a powerful and potent way to give your joints new life, repairing the old tissue. Here's what you do. You call today, 414-285-3474, 414-285-3474. Call QC Kinetics for your free consultation. 414-285-3474. Call QC Kinetics today.
Hi, I'm Eric Brown, owner of Outdoor Living Unlimited. Outdoor Living Unlimited is Wisconsin's #1 TimberTech decking installer. We install anything decks and more. Stop by Outdoor Living Unlimited showroom and visit OutdoorLivingUnlimited.com.
Stop feeling embarrassed about thinning hair and start looking and feeling your best with Hair Grow by New Nordic. Available online at Amazon, Walmart.com, and NewNordicUSA.com, or at your local CVS.
WTMJ, W277CV, and WKTI HD2 Milwaukee from the Annex Wealth Management Studios. This is News Radio WTMJ, a Good Karma brand station. This is Bucks Talk.
119-118 final in Indy. The Bucks season comes to an end tonight in overtime. An 8-0 run over the final 40 seconds of the game by the Indiana Pacers. Tyrese Haliburton scores the final 5 points, and the Pacers knock off the Bucks for a second consecutive season, sending the Bucks into the offseason earlier than any of us had hoped for. I do want to get to that Chris Middleton question, but as we all witnessed, there was a couple of skirmishes, exchanges of words between Giannis and Benedict Mathurin and Giannis and John Haliburton, the father of Tyrese Haliburton. Giannis was asked about that, about what happened after the game on the post-game press conference podium, and shared his lengthy insights.
I believe being humble in victory. That's how I am. Now there's can be a lot of people out there that are like, no, when you win the game, it's a green light for you to be disrespectful towards somebody else. I disagree. I've won the championship. They haven't. Okay, and that doesn't even say anything. I'm not trying to minimize their effort, but I remember when I won, my mom that she's never missed the games. From February 11th or 13th when she came in Milwaukee against the Knicks, she never missed a game. When we won the championship, I remember my mom, she was scared to cross. She was like, am I allowed to come and hug my son? I see, except now my brother does media. For this year, he wants to come back and play. But except in that, you've never seen my family see courtside. See, this is not something that we do. We don't. I try to keep my family away from the game. But losing the game, emotions run high. Having a fan, which at the moment I thought he was a fan, but then I realized he was Tyrese's son, which I love. Tyrese, I think, is a great competitor. He was his dad, sorry. Coming in the floor and showing me his son a towel with his face. This is what we do. This is what we effing do. This the F we do. This. I feel like that's very, very disrespectful. My dad. If you guys go and ask and learn, my dad's not with us no more. My dad used to come in the family room and was the most respectful person ever. When you come from nothing and you've worked your whole life to sell stuff in the street, and your whole life you'll be scared of the police of deporting you and sending you back to your country. You have to protect your kids with all means. You create this mentality of being humble your whole life, to not kind of disrespect anybody, not make the tension high, the emotions high, so anybody can snitch on you, say something bad about you. So when he came here, I remember I was like, Dad, why are you so humble? Why are you going to the family room? You don't even say a word. You sit in the back. Why are you like that? Don't worry about it. Don't worry. That's how I grew up. That's what I had around. So when I see other dads, which don't disrespect me, maybe if my son play basketball, I might be in the court. I might be the one on the court, and 20 years later, you can play this interview and say, Giannis, you're contradicting yourself. But we'll see in 20 years. But I'm talking about right now how I feel. Having so somebody's dad, which I'm happy for him, and I'm happy for his son, and I'm happy that he's happy for his son. That's how you're supposed to feel. But coming to me and disrespecting me and cursing at me, I think is totally unacceptable. Totally unacceptable. Okay? And I'm not the guy that points fingers, because in my neighborhood, snitches get stitches. So I don't want to say something, for him to say, to get fined or anything. But it's not respectful. I talked with him at the end, and I think we're in a good place.
We're going to leave it there. Thank you, sir.
Giannis Antetokounmpo on the interactions that we saw there with John Haliburton and, well, just with him, not with what we saw afterwards with Benedict Mathurin. I don't know what went behind that one. I saw somebody had referred to that as hypocritical. Did you see that, Matt?
I did not know.
We won't name them because they've since deleted the tweet. I'm not sure what was the hypocritical part. The last part where he said, "Maybe I do in 20 years if my kid is playing." I don't know, but this is how I feel now.
Maybe the humble aspect of it. I've seen some of that.
I have a title and they don't.
Right. But I think a lot of people, Giannis is called humble a lot. I mean, he calls himself humble. So some people saw the little clip and they think he's going up to Haliburton's dad and saying, or like being confrontational and all that.
Yeah.
Saying, "Oh, you're a humble winner, but a sore loser" type of thing. But that's obviously not what happened.
And Tyrese Haliburton talked about it too after the game and said his dad was not in the right, and he already talked to his dad about that and said he was going to reach out to Giannis and talk with Giannis as well. So I know he is public enemy number one in these parts, but Tyrese Haliburton recognizing that and saying the right things after the game as well. So we were asked about the Chris Middleton trade, and I was talking about this with somebody even before the playoffs started. We were just kind of talking about the makeup of the team and seeing Chris Middleton in D.C., seeing like we said, hey, I don't know if you're a consumer of basketball podcasts, you might want to avoid them for the next couple of months because we know what the landscape's going to be. You listen to Locked On Bucks. That one's a great one. But I saw one of the like AI-generated clickbait article headlines the other day was, "Here's who the Bucks should target in the offseason." And it was I would assume, artificial intelligence-generated article suggesting the Bucks trade Kyle Kuzma, Pat Connaughton, and the 2031 first-round pick to the Washington Wizards for Chris Middleton. I was talking about this with somebody, actually it was after game one, who will remain unnamed with the team, and it said to them, I don't know if this is a prisoner of the moment, but part of me does kind of feel like, did we owe it to Chris and do we owe it to this group to just say, all right, Giannis is healthy. Yeah. You didn't know at the trade deadline that Damian Lillard was going to be battling a blood clot and that Damian Lillard would ultimately tear his Achilles. But do we owe it to this group to say, this is it? This is the last run. Let's see how this looks in the playoffs with these three guys together. Like, think about that. You never saw Damian Lillard, Chris Middleton, and Giannis share the floor for a playoff game. You just get wrapped up in what Chris did against the Pacers last season. And look, what feeds into it too is what we said throughout the course of this show, the last few shows. Doc Rivers himself said it. Kyle Kuzma did not have, he said, a great series. Kyle Kuzma did not have a good series. So you see that and you think, I remember what Chris Middleton did against his Pacers team offensively a season ago. And even without Dame, how confident would you be in this series if it was Dame goes down, but you still have these other guys and you got Giannis and Chris Middleton? So we don't know the sliding doors of all of it and the butterfly effect of would you have done these moves? You could have still done DeLon Wright for Kevin Porter Jr. I believe you could have still done, DeLon Wright for Jericho Sims. You could have still done Marjon Beauchamp for Kevin Porter Jr. But you're facing that same issue where you don't have a 2031 pick to trade. That's frozen. And you don't have quite as much flexibility. And when I brought that up and said, Dad, do you feel like you owed it to the group to do this, to just say one last run? There wasn't a strong pushback, but the point was basically, well, I mean, if we say, all right, one last time, let's see if this works. Like, number one, what's the definition of insanity, right? No, this will be the year. Like, they're healthy now. This will be the year that we're all healthy. When we had seen for 3 straight years, that wasn't the case. So that goes into the thought process, not shedding money, but just getting that flexibility to get under the second apron was a big part of the thought process as well. And the biggest piece of it all, which kind of ties back to the first point, was you unfortunately were just in a spot now where you couldn't trust Chris Middleton to be available. And, I mean, I know the Wizards were playing for draft picks, and it was very much their best option to shut things down for guys and try to lose games to increase their odds of winning the lottery. But kind of lost in the shuffle of things late in the season was, even before guys were shut down for tanking purposes, Chris Middleton missed a couple of games and then was ultimately shut down with, I don't remember what the exact verbiage was. I think it was either knee soreness or knee swelling. That again, that issue was popping up. And the version of Chris Middleton we saw this season, he helps you offensively, sure. It gives you another guy that you trust in the half court to score. And, you know, we can look back to what he did against the Pacers. I don't know that that's the guy you were going to get in this series. But the bigger part of it is the defensive end. I know that's what we sold ourselves on with Kyle Kuzma, but I don't think you could trust Chris Middleton to be a playable player defensively in this series. And then the whole larger discussion over could you even trust him to be available for this series was the bigger part. The whole thing is just unfortunate that, again, it's a series of moves that just did not work out for this group. I mean, that's the way to ultimately remember these last couple seasons. You're paying the bill now for all those credit card purchases you made for that Drew Holiday trade. The bill has now come due. You're facing the bill for the Damian Lillard trade. And, you know, we can relitigate what moves that happened in the summer of 2023. Which of those were panic moves? Which of those moves were the right moves? But the fact of the matter is you made moves that you thought would make you a better team, and it didn't work out. I mean, Drew Holiday himself said, yeah, I get it. I would have traded for Damian Lillard as well. And Drew Holiday, by the way, same age as Dame, has now started to battle some issues health-wise. Same questions that we just brought up for Chris Middleton, maybe not to the same extent, but those are going to persist and exist with Drew Holiday now. Didn't play in this game tonight, by the way. That's what, his 3rd straight game that he missed in the first round of the playoffs? Celtics won that game, too, we should point out. So we did have 2 teams close out the series tonight. The Celtics are advancing. They wait for the winner of the Knicks-Pistons series because the Pistons staved off elimination and beat the New York Knicks tonight. So now the series goes back to Detroit, and the Knicks are still waiting to close out a series at home. You know the last time the Knicks closed a series at home?
No.
Jalen Brunson's dad was an active player for the Knicks.
And you know what? I think some people would say they should be down 3-1 right now.
Yeah, Drew Holiday missed the third straight game with a right hamstring strain. You made the moves that you thought would make you a better team, and it was just, unfortunately, the way I think a lot of us are going to remember these last 2 years now. Potentially 3 years, including next season, depending on what happens with Damian Lillard recovering from an Achilles tear. The way this will be remembered, maybe this is the tail end of this era of Bucks basketball, but the way those 2+ years are going to be remembered is, unfortunately, everything that could go wrong did go wrong. You always need health, you need to be good, and you need luck. And the Bucks got all three of those things in 2021. I know Giannis went down in Game 4 against the Atlanta Hawks and missed the remainder of that series, but he came back for the finals and had one of the greatest NBA Finals performances, one of the greatest closeout games in a championship that we have ever seen in this league. Dante DiVincenzo went down with an injury. Those were the injuries you had in the postseason. You missed 2 games from Giannis against an inferior team. Dante was a big loss at the time, but you had a pretty deep and solid team. You're very good. That defense was one of the best playoff defenses we had seen in the last 2 decades. And it goes without saying, you were very lucky. You were lucky Giannis's knee did not explode and he was able to return for the finals. You were lucky that other guys stepped up in Dante DiVincenzo's absence. Bryn Forbes, I think we'll all remember a couple of those performances as much as the Bucks have been victimized by those in playoffs of the past. You think back to Bryn Forbes outscoring Jimmy Butler in the first round of the playoffs. You think 1 year later of Grayson Allen doing that to the Chicago Bulls in the absence, in the shadows of Chris Middleton going down. But you were lucky there. You were lucky that Kevin Durant's foot was on the 3-point line and that the Brooklyn Nets were battling injuries and ran out of gas. You had all three of those things converge. And one by one, in the 4 years that have followed, you have not had those three. And you could argue in 2 of those years, you had only one of those three. And that's the unfortunate part. And that's why we say 97% of teams go into the offseason disappointed because only 1 of 30 can win a championship. There are a lot of questions to be answered for this team in the offseason. I expect it to be a very, very active and telling and busy offseason, excluding that cloud that on a national level is hanging over this franchise and what happens with your best player, but all the guys that are up for deals or are free agents. Brook Lopez is a 37-year-old free agent center. You've heard me throughout the course of the season really go to bat for Brook Lopez and talk about his importance, and I still believe he has that. But it's matchup-based. And especially as you start to get older, it becomes more and more important to be in that right setting and right matchup. And this series was not it for Brook Lopez. And frankly, if the Bucks were, let's say they won this game tonight and they made it really interesting Friday night and forced a Game 7, if you move on to the second round, I don't know that the Cavs would have been any different either. That's a team with their mid-range shooting that just assassinates drop defense, drop coverage. So that's a question to face as well, or a question to answer, I should say, is what does the future hold there? And we've talked, for months about what's the plan for life after Brook Lopez. Well, maybe you have that now with Jericho Sims, if that's the route that you move in. Not to say that there aren't things you need to enhance with Jericho Sims. You love what you see defensively, and I don't want to get hyperbolic here, but granted, small sample size, but you've seen enough from him to think, I don't know. You continue to hone this and develop this. Is this a guy that could potentially be like an all-defense caliber player? The big thing is the offense. It's the same thing we've talked about with Andre Jackson Jr., and that's a name we didn't mention much tonight. But to me, like those two guys, assuming you do retain Jericho Sims, and you got a good chance to do so, those two guys, it's a very important offseason for. because you got to develop something on the offensive end. And that comes down to them. That comes down to the coaching staff as well. What's the plan to really enhance my offense here? We've seen Andre Jackson Jr. work on corner threes, just being more comfortable with the ball and attacking closeouts, I think, is a big thing for Andre Jackson Jr. moving forward. For Jericho Sims, I think the easy thing to say is, hey, it'd be great if Jericho Sims could develop a jump shot. Yeah, it would. But you got Brook Lopez as a free agent. Bobby Portis has a player option. And for the amount of money that Bobby Portis is making here, there's more money on the open market. So what happens with Bobby Portis remains to be seen. Ideally, if you feel like we love this core group, and you heard a lot of optimism from Doc Rivers after this game tonight about, I love the team that we have, I love the young guys and what we've discovered with them, I really like this team and I'd like to see them together. Yeah, wouldn't it be great if you could talk Bobby Portis into, why don't you opt out of that deal and sign a team favorable deal for us for multiple years? But there's that question. Pat Connaughton has a player option. I think we're all assuming he's going to pick it up. Kevin Porter Jr. has a player option. And I know there was a lot of fear, too, earlier in the season or heading into the playoffs, especially when Kevin Porter Jr. was really starting to come into his own of, man, this guy's going to be in line for a huge payday. I don't think that's the case. For reasons that we discussed earlier when we're talking about the landscape of contracts and the cap situation in this league, there is no middle class anymore. And that's the interesting part with Bobby Portis, too. There's not really a middle class that exists anymore. You got things at your disposal. You have your taxpayer mid-level exception that you can use. You potentially have the full mid-level exception. That depends on what happens with Bobby Portis, with Brook Lopez, and with Pat Connaughton. But, if one of those guys, if Brook Lopez's $23 million is gone and that cap hold is gone, you've got your mid-level exception to use. So there are things that you can do. It's still not an ideal spot to be in with $54 million tied into a player that, in all likelihood, I don't want to doubt Damian Lillard, but history suggests Damian Lillard is not going to play next season. And then he's entering a walk year. But I do agree with Doc Rivers in that you liked, for years, we talked about this team needing to get younger and find young, talented, offensive, athletic, I should say, players and develop that. And that's, the reality is that's what put you in the spot that you're in now when you look at how much the roster is kind of atrophied the past couple of seasons. That's what took us down this road. You got Giannis. You got Damian Lillard. Last year you had Dame, you had Chris Middleton. But it's the role players that either left or got older. And because of some of those trades, because of the fact that when you didn't make a trade or when you did have your draft pick, it was later in the draft. It's not to say you can't find quality players late in the draft because we have seen other teams routinely do it. The Bucks have not. That's what's kind of led us down this road. It's one of those things where you look back on and you say, man, if only 2 years ago you had a Kevin Porter Jr. type, or you had this version of AJ Green, you had Jericho Sims, but you didn't. You do now. And it's a different landscape with a salary cap, with the CBA, with the second apron and first apron, where it's more and more important to have those types of guys. Gary Trent Jr. is a free agent. Taurean Prince is a free agent. Taurean Prince is going to turn 32 next season. Gary Trent Jr. is still 26. So when you look at that makeup, you look at if you can retain Gary Trent Jr., 26 years old. If you can bring back Jericho Sims, 26 years old. AJ Green, you've got under contract. Non-guaranteed deal. I'm going to go ahead and tell you right now, that deal is going to be picked up and guaranteed. AJ Green is 25 years old. Kevin Porter Jr. is 24 years old. He's got a player option, even if he opts out. Same thing we mentioned with Gary Trent. Depending on what happens with the rest of the roster, you open up that mid-level exception, the full amount. You got that to break up between those two guys and make sure you can retain them. Bobby Portis is 30 years old. Bobby Portis is younger than Giannis. If Bobby Portis is back, you got that piece too. So I'm not going to sit here and say the Bucks are in one of the best spots in the Eastern Conference. They are not. And I asked a caller before too, look, if I tell you those guys, you got 2 years left to Kyle Kuzma. Now that contract does descend in its value. It's $21 million next year. It's $19 million the year after that. But if I sit here and I tell you, look, you got Giannis. You got Kyle Kuzma. Bobby Portis is back. Pat Connaughton is going to pick up his player option. Pat Connaughton is back. But you bring back Kevin Porter Jr. You bring back Jericho Sims. You bring back Gary Trent Jr. You bring back Ryan Rollins. You've got Andre Jackson on your roster. Maybe you continue to develop Tyler Smith, who certainly has an NBA-ready shot. And you still got A.J. Green in the mix. You got other things you can do, whether that's veteran minimums or it's still a part of breaking up that mid-level exception to bring in one other piece. And that's how you fill out your roster. How do you feel about that group? I still think that's, without seeing what else happens in the Eastern Conference, I still think that's a 5 to 7 team in the East. And that gives you a shot. Does it put you at the level of the Boston Celtics right now, the Cleveland Cavaliers? No. But you go into that with the hope of it's another year with these young guys developing. And I do think you loved what you saw on both ends of the floor with that group. The 5 guys that played that game, closed the game, and played the most minutes in the game. It worked, and there was chemistry there. There was certainly developing chemistry between Giannis and Kevin Porter Jr. all throughout the season. That I think you say, okay, we feel good about this. Now it's just a matter of rounding out the rest of the roster. And I'll say this, too. I am not going to sell John Horst short and underestimate what else he can do. If the route that you take is we're all aligned, I want to be here. I being Giannis. I want to be here. Let's tell me your plan and how we start to get out of this and how we move forward. I like what I hear. All right, let's go to work. John Horst has made a lot of moves happen that myself and others just did not think were possible. Drew Holiday was a big name that came up all throughout that 2020-2021 season, and especially after the Bucks lost to the Heat in disappointing fashion. But most of us did, great fit. He'd be ideal. I don't think the Bucks have the pieces to land him. You remember what the Bucks got Drew Holiday for? Do you remember, outside of the draft picks, what the cost was for Drew Holiday? George Hill and Eric Bledsoe. George Hill, Eric Bledsoe, and a whole lot of draft capital, which, again, you're just starting to pay off now. But that's how John Horst got Drew Holiday. The way you pieced together that trade for Damian Lillard, same story. This one definitely did not work out, but we all at the time, or most I should say, were very optimistic. Hey, as disappointed as it was to lose P.J. Tucker, all right, Jay Crowder is a pretty good P.J. Tucker replacement, but I just don't think the Bucks have the pieces to get him. You made moves. Granted, one of them, I think even John Horst would say, yeah, I'd like that one back, where you traded Dante DiVincenzo for Serge Ibaka and some second-round picks that allowed you to reset that and throw 5 the way of the Phoenix Suns for Jay Crowder. But we've seen John Horst with a willingness to make moves and creative moves at that. I would expect the same in the offseason for this group. Are the Bucks going to enter next season as one of the, 3 perceived title threats in the Eastern Conference as we sit here today on April 29th and evaluate that landscape and the roster that we just went through, the free agency decisions the Bucks have to make, right? No, probably not. But I do think there is a path forward for this team. It's just a matter of how far does that road take you? That's the thing we don't know now. That's the thing we won't know until well after the draft and free agency in the summer. We're not going to know where that road takes us in terms of when the season starts and where until sometime in August. the playoffs are always fun, but these last 2 years, there's just been something about it where talking with someone else too, I'm like, man, remember when this was fun? Like, remember when you expected to win in the first round? And, to Giannis's point about sometimes, you got to be humble. It just gets so easy, and we've had this conversation the last couple of years, to not take any of this for granted. Giannis and the type of, transcendent player that he is, a generational talent. Don't take having that in your backyard for granted. That this guy is without question the best player in the conference. He is arguably the best player in the league. One of the two best players in the league. It's easy to just, I know we're going to have that for 82 games and just kind of forget about it and take it for granted. But I think now is, you would hear that more and more the last 2 years especially. These are the moments where you reflect on that and realize why you would hear that. Don't take Giannis for granted. Don't take this run that the Bucks have had for granted. When you think about, this 9-year run of being in the playoffs and how painful it was those first 2 years to lose in the first round and think, when is this team going to get out of the first round of the playoffs? You lose in 6 to the Toronto Raptors. We were just talking about that game earlier in the season when the Bucks came back to beat the Timberwolves from that 20-point deficit and said, remember, in some ways it was kind of reminding you of that game that you lost, the closeout game at home, Game 6 to the Raptors in the first round in, 2017. Where you were down, I think, 22, and you come back and you tie the game on a Jason Terry three-pointer, and the building is going nuts. Bucks are going to force a Game 7 in Toronto and finally get out of the first round of the playoffs, and you lose the game. And then the next year, you have the coaching change midway through the season, and you got Joe Prunty leading you into the playoffs against the banged-up Boston Celtics team. And you lose that series in 7 games, in a series you frankly should have won. And with the injuries the Celtics had, no Kyrie Irving there, the Bucks were the more talented team. And they lose, coming up short in 7 games. And you just felt like, man, when is this team going to break through? They hire Mike Budenholzer the following summer. And, I remember talking about this with others, and I remember my thought, too, of, okay, maybe, it would be nice if this team could have home court advantage in the first round of the playoffs instead of constantly playing for 6th or 7th, 8th even in the Eastern Conference. Like, the goal is home court advantage. And that first year of Bud in the preseason, I remember the first preseason game, seeing the amount of threes that Bucks team took and thinking, this is going to be different. You win 7 straight games. The expectations start to climb. You go back to Bud's introductory press conference talking about unlocking Giannis. That was the goal, and that was what he was going to set out to do. And the system that was put in place, where you were without question, holy cow, the Bucks have arrived as one of the better teams in the league. You get the 1 seed. You win 60 games. Think about that run. As disappointing as, if this is the end of this run in this era of Bucks basketball, as disappointing as it is to end, nothing ends good. Otherwise, it wouldn't end, right? But in that run, you got to the playoffs 7 straight years, 9 total, but really starting in 2018 when you brought in Bud and you started to build this core. 7 straight trips to the playoffs. The number 1 seed, the Milwaukee Bucks, the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference twice. Sure, you had 3 first-round losses. You played in 2 conference finals. You won an NBA championship. You saw a player on your roster become the best player in the world, inarguably, for a couple of seasons. And then some guy named Nikola Jokic comes along and makes it a conversation. But you see Giannis become a 2-time MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, continuing to do things that, whether it's a game-by-game basis, a season as a whole, you look at all these things, and granted, some of them can be cherry-picking numbers, but a lot of these things you look at and you say, well, Giannis, the first one to accomplish this since Chuck's notes, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, since Wilt Chamberlain. Like, that's the company that he's been in. That's what we've had here in this 7 to 9 year run of Bucks basketball. I hope it's not done, because it is fun to be relevant. It is fun for your games to have meaning. It is fun to have the best player in the league, right? Or one of the best players in the league. It's fun to have these big games and to have those expectations that come into a season. But sometimes you need to remember what it's like. And this isn't me saying, well, it's a good thing. If the Bucks do, in fact, take a step backward, it's a good thing. Or coping. But sometimes that's what you need to experience to kind of lean back on Giannis's comments of humble, having a humble approach. You've tasted a lot of success. And it's been disappointing these last 3 years. But it doesn't mean it overshadows what happened in the first, 4 of those seasons. There's a much deeper dive to be done, and I'm sure we'll start to see him over the offseason. An oral history on the summer of 2023 for the Bucks, and where did things start to go south? But it's not one singular move that got us to this point where this is a third straight first-round defeat that we're talking about. It's been a number of moves that you made to make yourself better, and they just didn't work out. And I think that's the big thing to keep in mind, too. This isn't a team that got to this point by sitting on their hands and saying, we're going to go cheap. We're not going to pay to upgrade the team. We're going to try to skirt the luxury tax. Think about how many teams we've seen do that these past couple of decades, and especially now with the swift penalties that come in with this second apron and first apron in the new CBA. This is a group, top to bottom, that was aligned on let's go for it. Whatever it takes. If you want to criticize the moves that are made, the moves that didn't work out, draft picks that were made, signings that were made, trades that were made, fine. Because we just went through some of them that did not work, that did not yield the results that you would have hoped for. But you cannot criticize this team's appetite and effort to win and go for it and exhaust every resource that they've had for nearly a decade now to put themselves in that spot. It doesn't last forever. And again, we don't know that this is the end of anything. This core, well, it is looking more and more likely that it's the end of this core, but maybe you found a new core. And we had somebody else bring up the Warriors, and look at the Warriors' second championship. It took 2 lean years to get there, to kind of load up again, get some young guys in the mix. It took a couple of comebacks from injury for Klay Thompson, and the Warriors won a championship again. And the Warriors, a couple of years after that, are right back in the mix, theoretically now, with Jimmy Butler and Steph Curry. Yeah, you might be there. I think the big difference is the Warriors did have their draft assets. You don't right now. But, yeah, the whole 2 timelines approach. Maybe you're there, and maybe this is we got to kind of regroup and reload for a year, 2 years. And we still got Giannis in his prime. We still have a competitive team around him. And we feel like as these guys continue to develop and we start to get more assets in the mix, then we're going to be on that Warriors timeline where we're right back in the discussion. And we're a team that's threatening 2 years from now. I know that's tough to hear. It's tough to envision when you look at things like the cap and the players and contract situations and who's a free agent and what moves can the Bucks make. I get that. But that's, again, why the biggest thing that I just keep going back to is if it is, in fact, mediocrity that this team is looking at for these next couple of seasons, I would much rather be mediocre with Giannis than be mediocre or hoping to get back to mediocre or good without him. But ultimately, that is a decision that collectively they are going to come to as a group. And by decision, I mean Giannis. Not to put words in his mouth or the franchise's mouth, but I can assure you there is no one within the organization that is saying, you know how we get better? We trade Giannis. We trade this guy that just gave you a 30-20 triple-double in an elimination game in the playoffs, a guy that left everything all out there on both ends of the floor once again, and a guy that, oh, by the way, finished in the top 3 in MVP voting once more. I would assume when we learn that MVP award, he's going to finish 3rd. But, that's not the path to getting better. I think the last thing to say about this was as tough as this was to witness and as heartbreaking of a defeat as it was, as we joked before, the Gary Trent Jr. game that wasn't. 33 points, the biggest shots of the night. 24 of those 33 come in the fourth quarter and overtime. This was ticketed to be not the Gary Trent Jr. game, the other Gary Trent Jr. game. And then it wasn't, because of an 8-0 run by the Pacers and 2 very, very costly turnovers to close out this game. This loss wasn't because of Gary Trent Jr., but the joke is Gary Trent Jr. goes from the GOAT to the GOAT in this game. And in many ways, with all of the inconsistencies that we saw, the up and down play, the injuries, everything else, as we mentioned, it just felt like this has been a 2-year stretch, 3-year stretch, really, of anything that could go wrong did go wrong for this group. That, in that sense, it unfortunately felt like a very fitting end to the season. And who knows what it means beyond that for this group of, or this iteration of the Bucks. And with that, it brings an end to this season and to this postgame show. I thank everybody for sticking with us through the year and through the, 2-hour session that we've had here to kind of recap what we experienced throughout this season, where this franchise heads to, and what all this means. It's a frustrating time. It's probably a concerning time for a lot of Bucks fans. We don't know what the future is going to hold for this team, more so than any other season that we can remember, for multiple reasons. It's not just all of the discourse that's surrounding Giannis. The age of some of the players you have that are free agents, the number of free agents that you have. The only thing you know is this group's going to be different. I know that's the case every single season when a campaign comes to an end, but more so because of all those things. This one is definitely going to take on a different tone when we reconvene next season. But that'll do it for this season and for this show. It has been my absolute privilege to continue to host this show and continue to interact with all of you guys throughout the course of this season. I will remind you, we do have some daily discourse going on Locked On Bucks, which you can find each and every day. So by all means, seek that out for your Bucks fix throughout the offseason, as this is going to do it for us. Everyone that
WTMJ, W277CV
on this show throughout the course of the season. We mentioned the names before. Evan Witallison and the work that he's put in on this. Brian Kelly, Greg Hill. We've had the reunion with him a couple of times on the show this season. Isaac Marquardt, Nate Rilling, Will Summers, Chris Larson filling in for us on those games when we've been on the air on ESPN Milwaukee. Max Meyerson, who's really loving the run he's seeing from his Cleveland Cavaliers right about now. Ashton Rotman filling in on a few shows. Jaslyn Snell, when we've had a couple of earlier games throughout the course of the season. And the guy that we've had for the bulk of the season, Matt Yazel. Excellent job. And we didn't even get to the comments tonight, Matt. There have been quite a few.
Too many to get to.
I think we know the tone of the comments. But, yeah, that's going to do it for tonight. So stay tuned throughout the summer for obviously any major changes or big moves that come to this team. And then when the schedule release comes out sometime in mid-August, so we now get about a 3-month layoff here of not really focused on the Bucks until July 1 when free agency starts as well. But we'll know the schedule in August. We'll know when the next game broadcast is going to be and when we'll reconvene on these airwaves. I hope to talk to you again on the Bucks Radio Network and on some version of this show. But it's been a privilege, and that'll do it for tonight. The third straight year the Bucks season comes to an end in the first round of the playoffs. My sincere thanks to everybody that interacted with us in the chat, which is popping off big time here on YouTube. Everybody that called in and voiced their opinions and thoughts and concerns of tonight's loss as well. And, of course, to Matt for his work tonight and throughout the season. That'll do it for this season and for Bucks Talk. We will talk with you again next season.
Do you know the secret to losing up to 1 pound of fat every day? At Milwaukee